Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the vlog. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. We are back with the C8 70th anniversary edition. And diving right in, I want to talk about the three things that are different for the 2023 C8 model year. And right off the bat, if you're looking for drastic changes in the model year, this is a carryover model year. There are no drastic refreshments, there aren't no refinements. There isn't anything major that's being changed up in this model year. However, being fortunate enough to have now had a 2020 C8 Corvette and a 2022 C8 Corvette, when you own the cars, you notice little ambiances and little nuances that change from model year to model year. And I thought it'd be cool to talk about some of those changes for the 2023 model year for those waiting for their 2023 Stingray. And so to put it another way, there's revolutionary changes, there's evolutionary changes, kind of like the mid-year refreshes that you saw in the C7 generation or the revolutionary C7 to C8 generation change. And then there's changes like the ones I'm going to talk about today that don't get put out in the press, that don't get put out in some memo, that don't really get talked about or even noticed for that matter unless you own one of these cars and can pick up the small caveats that change. Things beyond the accessories and options changes as well. So I'm not going to talk about the fact that the 2023 model year gets the forged aluminum wheels on the Stingray, mainly because they're an option on the Z06 that I think General Motors thought the Stingray should get that option as well, or at least additional wheel options. Or other accessory changes for 23 like the factory front guards that you can now option straight from General Motors. I was the first YouTube channel to cover that before the GM part was even licensed. Or other accessory changes like the hash on the rear back panel or the speaker grills that change for 2023. That's all stuff that gets covered. That's all stuff you can figure out by comparing order guides, but I want to talk about three things that have changed for the 2023 model year that I have not heard anyone else talk about, but I've noticed now having had the C8 Corvette. And again, for the second time, I want to forewarn everyone that's going to say, oh my god, this isn't even worth a video, that these are very, very minor changes, but I still think they're cool and quirky and worth talking about. So number one is the front latch on the back. They have changed the cylinder. I was actually one of the first YouTubers to cover that. I actually might be the only one to cover that so far. And I have a full dedicated video leaking the memo for that, but let's talk about that on the 2023 Corvette that I have now. I'll throw in some overlay of the actual keyhole. And you can see here, there's just a hole with nothing there. And so coming inside the C8 Corvette, you can see here there's a manual release latch in case somebody's unfortunately stuck in here that they can release themselves out of. It would have made sense for them to run this latch or a second latch all the way through maybe the back panel. And if they dropped a latch somewhere back here for you to be able to pull and open it in the case of emergency, you would not have to follow the General Motors now recommended practice of actually hole sawing a hole into the rear frunk. So that is different for 2023. That wasn't the case for 22 or 21 or 2020 on the C8. So not a huge fan of that change for 2023. It's a cost-cutting maneuver from General Motors. Hopefully it saved them some money. But I think as this vehicle ages and there's mechanical problems, that's a change for 2023 that I'm not a big fan of. And so for C8 HTC squad, if your roof mechanism gets stuck for whatever reason, hits an obstacle, doesn't properly close halfway through, the electronic release for the rear frunk actually will not operate. And so as components for the car age, it's going to be a problem in the long term, I think, in terms of serviceability and reliability. And I cover a lot more in detail with that leaked memo in the video in the description, as well as on the Corvette playlist, so definitely check that out. Somehow I managed to corrupt some of the footage and audio, but number two on my list of things that have changed on the 2023 C8 Corvette is what lights come on during night mode. And for those that haven't been following the channel, I've mentioned night mode as one of my favorite features for the C8 Corvette. Basically, when at night, when the lights are on, just dim it down all the way and click it a hair further, and it will shut off a majority of the lights on the inside of the cabin, setting a really nice, calm, and dark tone inside. And right off the bat, again, this will be one of those things that I will be the only one to notice, the only one to talk about or pick up because I am that much of a geek and nerd. So on both my 2020 and 2022, so I imagine 21 was the same, the door open button actually lit up during night mode. That little light you can see in this picture right here, it would come on during night mode and it'd be one of the few lights that would be on inside the cabin. For 2023, it seems that that light no longer comes on, so it's one less source of ambiance and light on the inside when you really dim it down and turn off all the inside lights. So a very cool and small change, but one worth noting. And lastly, the third thing that I have noticed on the 2023 C8 Corvette that is different is actually something I've complained about in the past. I have a relatively old phone because I'm cheap, and unless it catches on fire, I have no reason to replace it. Samsung Galaxy S8 has a really thick OtterBox case, and this marking right here, the little strip that holds the phone, is a little bit smaller on the 2023s. And so I would have to really push down on this exact same phone on the 22 for it to fit into the wireless charging area, but on the 23 it slides in much easier, which is a very small and subtle change that makes the C8 a little bit more practical in 2023. As these phones get bigger, my S8 Plus really is not much bigger than a One Plus or an iPhone 14, and so with an OtterBox case, fitting it in the wireless charging area was always a bit of a challenge, but it seems General Motors for 23 have made it a little bit wider so it's a little bit easier for the phone to fit in, is what I've observed so far. The car from 2022 to 2023 has changed, but it's the same phone. It definitely fits in much easier now. And then lastly, I have a bonus item number 4 on what has changed for the 2023 Corvette. It seems that General Motors in the gauge cluster has added in a transmission canister gauge that tells you what percentage the transmission filter has left for life, which is pretty cool. You do get the transmission filter replaced under 7,500 miles free of charge in your first service from General Motors and Chevrolet, but going forward it is an expense out of pocket. And it's nice to be able to measure that lifespan for something that General Motors highly recommends changing on a regular interval straight out of your gauge cluster. So I imagine when this goes down to a certain percentage level, General Motors will put a light up on the dash that lets you know it is time to service that transmission filter. Really cool upgrade for 2023, small, subtle, but still impactful. But yeah, that's all I have for today's video. These are 3 things and one bonus one that I have noticed different on the 2023 C8 Corvette that no one's mentioned or talked about. Very small things, but subtle things, which tells us that General Motors over the course of the C8 lifespan have been gradually improving and improving and improving the design of the C8 Corvette one little change at a time. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of heat in the comment section that this video is an utter waste of time, but again, I've thought this was helpful and informative, and it's one of those little cool, quirky things that I think are worth talking about. All things that you would really have to own a C8 Corvette to notice or pick up on, because that's how small these items were. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. If you have not already, definitely go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Tons of content to come in the month of December, and as always, until the very next video, I look forward to seeing all of you in the comment section below.